interventions, but more of a complementary. So just kind of keeping those at the top of your mind as well when you're looking at nursing interventions and that sort of thing. Again, when you're prioritizing a nursing diagnoses, always, the life-threatening potential or safety issues should always be at the top of your list, because that is, obviously what's most important. Quality of life is certainly important, but that life-threatening and safety always needs to come first. When you do have a patient who's like OCD, obsessive compulsive, knowing how, what are describers? What does that look like, somebody with OCD, and being able to identify that. Getting back to anorexia, a lot of the patients with that disease are many times treated as outpatients, but they will come to a point when outpatient therapy may no longer be effective. And so if they're not putting on weight, that may be a point where they are actually admitted to an inpatient area to really be monitored more closely. As we kind of talked about already, when we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what is the number one thing that we need to address first? Safety. So we already talked about that as well, but just keeping that at the forefront. Having a good idea of schizophrenia and what does that look like in a patient, what's that definition, and then also some nursing diagnoses that may go along with schizophrenia, such as the disturbed thought processes, impaired communication, certainly, and that sort of thing. But being able to identify and put some different diagnoses with different mental health diagnoses with your nursing diagnoses, and then also looking at some ways that you would communicate with different types of patients that you would see. We will be touching on that a lot in the exam. So what's the best way to talk to people with OCD versus somebody with major depression? And some statements that you may or may not want to make to those types of people. And I'm going to go ahead and insert the code word that I'll have you put in a Dropbox, and that is lights. As I'm looking outside, I see lots of Christmas lights, so that word is going to be lights. When a client has mania, you can definitely see that will take a toll on all of your staff that working with that client, especially if it's that acute mania. They'll really exhaust people because they'll joke, they'll manipulate, they'll insult, and they'll argue, very argumentative as well. So it makes the staff start to feel defensive and fatigued. And so where do you go from there? How would you deal with that type of patient? And one of the most important things is for everybody to be on the same page and set limits, know what the limits are, and then be consistent with following through with that. So, having kind of a short rein on those types of patients, because otherwise they will kind of take the lead, and that's when they'll kind of wear you down and wear down the staff in the unit. So making sure everybody's on the same page. And that's a good thing to remember, not only with that type of patient, but you will see, even if you work in the med-surg world or other areas of nursing, that you will care for some patients who do have some mental illness that maybe it's undiagnosed, but truly a lot of patients will play caregivers off of each other, a day shift versus a PM shift, a CNA versus an RN. So it's always very important for your care team to be really on the same page and know that you're holding that patient accountable, and you're not giving in to, their way of kind of cutting down other people and playing games with you. So something that we don't often think of, but certainly there is elder abuse, elder domestic abuse, or just elder abuse. So, and especially when we look at patients who maybe have some memory loss or Alzheimer's, if they are not fully, in charge of their own mental capacity, that's something that we do need to really watch out for, and be advocates for our patients, as we would with a pediatric patient. So it's a similar concept there. When you are working with somebody who is having, is in a depressed state, it's always important to ask the question, do you have a plan, to really help you assess where they're at with that and how serious this is. There are ways that they may say things that may not come across yes, I'm going to get a gun and shoot myself, but they may say, you know what, it's all going to be better tomorrow. I have a plan on how I'm going to make it better. So kind of looking for that underlying message, maybe that it isn't ringing out black and white for you, but definitely can certainly mean that that patient still does have a plan to end their life. So you need to take that very seriously as well. Make sure that you have a good idea on some of the major medications used to treat mental illness, and some of the major things that go along with them, such as clozapine. What are the things that we monitor with that medication? Are there certain levels that need to be watched with certain different medications, certain side effects that could become toxic or lethal that we really need to watch for? So make sure that you have a good understanding there. And that was, I believe, in the key concept guide as well. Make sure that when you are also dealing with a patient who has bipolar disorder, a lot of times there are some different medications that can be used to treat that, one of which that we know pretty predominantly would be lithium, but then make sure that you are aware of some others as well. Getting back to abuse, and we talked a little bit about elder abuse, but also domestic violence. There are different phases. And so you can see if it's a man, wife, woman, wife, husband couple, there's a tension building phase. There's the acute incident. And then after the incident, what we like to call the honeymoon phase, where, he was just really stressed out and had a bad day, and I'm sure this won't happen again. And then the next phase 4, is that kind of reorganization and resolution phase, where everything's great again, until the next cycle. So being able to assess where your patient may be at within those phases certainly is important as well. If you do have a patient who's bipolar, and you'll see, getting back to that manic and how to band together as staff members, but also knowing that depending what type of a psych unit you work in, the one where I taught clinicals had many different diagnoses in the same unit, so it wasn't broken down into smaller pods or anything. So when you have these manic patients, certainly at times they can begin to point fingers and yell at people and become very escalated very quickly, which can definitely cause some fear for some of the other clients. So as a caregiver, just making sure that you do a good job of trying to calmly de-escalate, and then actually redirecting that patient from that area, because they're scaring the other people there. So redirecting them to a different area is definitely important as well. Knowing what to watch for when you are giving psych meds such as haloperidol. What are some findings that may be found with different meds as far as adverse reactions and that sort of thing. Overall, I think you guys are going to do great on this test. You will see, some themes where there was a lot of focus. So just, real quickly again, and I kind of touched on this already, but making sure that you have a good understanding of therapeutic communication. And what does that mean when you're talking to someone with major depression versus what does that look like when you're talking to someone with anorexia nervosa? You're not gonna, you're not gonna say, oh, you're not fat. And you just need to have a good understanding. And there'll be multiple choice of things that you can choose, but really thinking through what is the best therapeutic communication for that patient at the time. And also, what is the best nursing diagnoses for a particular type of patient. So in some questions, there may be multiple. That might be good. But if if safety is an option, as I kind of mentioned, we always really want to go with safety first because that's our number one priority with our patients. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Some of you are starting to turn in your large projects, so I will certainly begin grading those and getting those back to you. We are in our final week, and I have to have grades posted by Monday, I believe the 18th. So I don't have a lot of time for turnaround. So as you're getting those in, I'm going to start working on those and getting those graded for you as well. Please feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Otherwise, good luck on your final, and certainly hope you guys enjoy your winter break, and happy holidays to you. Thanks.